Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show.
After reading his information list, Meng Ze was quite emotional. Unconsciously, he already has so many branches of technology. This also means that you will need to spend more money in the future to upgrade. Letting go of the cluttered thoughts in his mind, Meng Ze began to move his troops. Before that, Meng Ze sent a word to -90 degrees. Look, needless to say, Meng Ze believes -90 degrees will definitely know. Up to 4,000 transport planes were already in place, and the biochemical soldiers entered neatly and quickly. A batch of fully loaded transport aircraft took off into the air and began to form formations. Meng Ze's remaining more than 500 ghost fighters have already begun to explore the route in advance. The number of transport aircraft is insufficient, and the level is too low. If you encounter a multi-armored thorn snake, you can hardly resist 2 attacks, so you must ensure the safety of the transport aircraft and the soldiers on board. In the biochemical arsenal, the production of a new class, the Ghost Soldier, was completed rapidly. There are not many of them, a total of 20. The amount of one transport aircraft. Category: Ghost Soldier. Level: Level 1. Population: 1 unit. Life Force: 100. Attack Power: 20. Defense Power: 1. Combat Life: 10 hours. Manufacturing Requirements: 500 units of crystal ore. Note: Ghost Soldiers have 3 skills: Stealth, Locking, and Nuclear Positioning, and belong to the Special Strike class. At the airport, Meng Ze also began to replenish the number of ghost fighters, planning to increase the number of ghost fighters to 2,000. In fact, by this time, the level 1 ghost fighter could not adapt to the advanced battlefield at all, but who made Meng Ze lack money to upgrade the airport, and could only continue to let the ghost fighter as a bait. All transport planes flew in formation of 1,000 towards the base of the kindergarten masters, separated by 20 kilometers between the formations. Now the battlefield is becoming less and less secure, and although the base where the kindergarten master and I died with still exists, the Zerg continue to spread while holding them both down. It's just that due to the existence of these 2 bases, the Zerg are small-scale operations and spread slowly. At this time, any action of Meng Ze must consider the possibility of encountering Zerg snipers, scatter the formations, just to prevent being swept away, and each formation is also followed by 100 to 200 science ships. In the last transport fleet, there were not only transport planes carrying 20 ghost soldiers, but also a large number of transport aircraft carrying engineering troops. On the -90 degree side, when I received Meng Ze's news, I immediately switched the picture to Meng Ze's base, and I just saw the dense biochemical core boarding the plane. At the beginning, -90 degrees was still a little unclear about Meng Ze's meaning. Did he send so many biochemical soldiers to deliver food? Immediately he reacted suddenly, and his eyes suddenly widened. Really? No way. Incredibly -90 degrees, retrieved Meng Ze biochemical lancer data. Allies can't see tech bonuses. Biochemical lancer. Level: Level 2 Mysterious. Population: 1 unit. Life Force: 1,000. Attack Power: 50. Defense Power: 5. Speed: 30. Description: Turn basic combat class. This attribute really shocked -90 degrees. Not to mention, his legendary lancer has a life of 400, and the most important thing is attack power. His legendary lancer is 30, and Meng Ze's soldier is 50. This represents a gap that is not as simple as 20 attack power, excluding any technology bonuses on both sides. The carapace defense of the multi-armored thorn snake is 20, and the lancer at -90 degrees can only deal 10 effective damage, while Meng Ze's lancer is 30 effective damage. This is 3 times the attack effect. According to the information obtained from the reconnaissance, Meng Ze's lancers are stronger than the relic Zerg level 3 berserk jumping insects, and there is no problem with the front hard steel. Meng Ze, how many soldiers have you prepared? Looking at the batch after batch of transport planes that rose into the air, the communication was sent at -90 degrees, and the shock on his face had not yet dissipated. 80,000. Ha ha ha. Good brother, it's really powerful. 80,000 second-level mysterious soldiers, at least 160 million resources invested. -90 degrees excited face red. Meng Ze's batch of troops has definitely been able to reduce its pressure a lot. During this time, at least 1/3 of the Zerg's forces were attacking him, and although he enjoyed being a commander, the constant fighting put a lot of economic pressure on him. The family's resources are getting worse and worse, and the surrounding players are also actively or forced to ask for resources, but they still can't keep up with the speed of consumption. Before, he and Meng Ze agreed to give him 3 days, but he didn't expect that in less than 2 days, he would not be able to hold on. Fortunately, Meng Ze gave strength and sent troops in advance, it was simply timely rain, which made him how not to get excited. Meng Ze actually knows that -90 degrees must be very stressful, and the difficulty of fighting against the third level Zerg as a second level player can be imagined. If it weren't for the support of family resources behind it, it would have been swept away by the Zerg long ago. Meng Ze sent a message to cheer up allies and give him confidence, hanging up the communication with -90 degrees. Meng Ze then called the kindergarten master and aided the two younger brothers who died with, informing them that they would use their base as a springboard. The two younger brothers welcomed this. What does it matter if the springboard is not a springboard, as long as the strength of the big guys is stationed, their base will be more stable. After confirming the stationing with his younger brothers, Meng Ze called up the map of the mine that he had prepared in advance for Jubrain. This map is not a complete map of the mine, but only a map synthesized by Meng Ze, or through information obtained by himself, or through his younger brother and allies. Although the degree of completion is minimal, the location of the mine is accurately marked in individual areas. As the saying goes, don't fight an unprepared battle. Since Meng Ze has decided to directly confront the relic Zerg, he must plan in advance. Meng Ze chose the base of his two younger brothers as a springboard for no reason. The kindergarten master and I have been fighting with the Zerg for a long time. The Zerg should have a relatively clear understanding of the strength of the two of them, and it is known from the forces sent by the Zerg to maintain pressure on these two bases. Near the two younger brothers, there must be a Zerg command class or relay station, most likely a Zerg host, that can fly in the sky. But neither of them dared to give up the base to investigate outside, and they didn't know what direction the Zerg host was. But no matter what, Meng Ze's forces suddenly arrived, and even if they were discovered by the host, they could catch the Zerg by surprise. In addition to the small number of troops near the base of the two younger brothers, it can be used as a breakthrough. In the northeast of the kindergarten master, Manhwa died in the southeast, and the ruins are in the northwest of the kindergarten master, and Manhwa died in the southwest. Each has a mine. The mining area with the two younger brothers just becomes an irregular quadrilateral. Meng Ze prepares to take down the two mines as a bridgehead to attack the relic Zerg, especially the mining area northeast of the kindergarten master, which is only 1,000 kilometers away from the ruins, is definitely the dead cave of the Zerg. If Meng Ze occupies this mine, the threat to the relic Zerg is as great as a sword hanging in the air. The relic Zerg couldn't attack him or not. By forcing the Zerg into battle in this way, the pressure on the -90 degree side will be greatly reduced, and even the pressure on all players bordering the Zerg will be greatly reduced. At that point, most of the pressure was transferred to Meng Ze. However, Meng Ze is not worried. He has already thought about it. Even if he can't hold this mining area, there are two younger brothers and another mine in the northwest direction of the kindergarten master, which can form an iron triangle as a second line of defense. At that time, between these three mines and the protruding mine at the front, it will become a meat grinder for both the Zerg and Meng Ze. Because of -90 degrees, the Zerg has not yet developed, and it is still an ordinary level of troops. The two sides are fighting against each other, and Meng Ze is not afraid. Meng Ze's home mining capacity is equivalent to nearly 400 poor mines, and according to the area now occupied by the Zerg, Meng Ze does not believe that the Zerg will have more resources than him. What's more, I am not alone. As Meng Ze expected, a small number of Zerg forces have bypassed the base of Who's Die within the kindergarten master and expanded westward. However, due to the lack of troops, the expansion rate was very slow. Meng Ze's ghost fighter scouted the channel when he saw fierce resistance from the players below. Someone even sent Meng Ze a distress message, but Meng Ze ignored this information. If you can't resist even this attack, it's better to extinguish it. After a long journey of more than 10 hours, the transport fleet finally approached the base of the kindergarten master and Meng Ze's house. 2 forges and 2 airports have finally begun to upgrade. Meng Ze's headquarters base was empty at this time, with only 1,000 newly produced biochemical lancers as a defensive force. But even with this little bit of strength, Meng Ze is a well-deserved overlord in the surrounding area. Front, the formation of ghost fighters exploring the way is now less than 400, and these few remaining ghost fighters did not stay after reaching the base of the kindergarten master. Instead, he turned a corner directly over the base, and flew to the base due north, where I died with whom, and continued his mission of exploring the way. The first batch of transport planes arrived over the kindergarten master base, and this little brother was already looking through it. I don't know how many tanks the Meng Ze guy can send over this time. The kindergarten master did not think about anything else in his heart. According to the current situation, he did not know what use other arms could have as cannon fodder. It is not surprising that kindergarten masters think like this. The world of big guys is difficult for ordinary people to understand. Just like imagining the emperor carrying a peasant with a golden burden, their vision limits their imagination. When the transport plane fell and the biochemical soldiers, transported got off the transport plane, the jaws of the kindergarten masters almost fell to the ground. Guns, gun, Lancer, big guy, what is your plan? Why send the Lancers over? When Meng Ze received the communication from the kindergarten master, he saw the disappointed expression on the other person's face. Only then did I remember that the kindergarten master is different from -90 degrees, and the other party is unilaterally forming an alliance with him, which is actually a disguised subordination, but there is no need to confess. Haha, kindergarten brother, don't worry, I transported these gunmen all the way over, but I didn't let them be cannon fodder. Big guy, what can a Lancer do besides being cannon fodder? The kindergarten master still had helplessness on his face. You just look at it. Meng Ze didn't say much. 1,000 explanations are better than one action. And he can't give a picture to a kindergarten master. When you are a big guy, you have to look like a big guy, and you can't explain everything because the little brother says. When Meng Ze's first transport planes began their return journey, the biochemical infantry corps on the ground quickly began to move. Get out of the way. Meng Ze quickly set up a wartime channel, gave instructions to the kindergarten masters, and took over the command of Meng Ze's troops that had been left in the kindergarten master base. Although the kindergarten master did not understand Meng Ze's orders, and was very worried about his base, the orders of the big guys were not something he could disobey. As soon as the gunmen blocking the intersection retreated, the Zerg troops who were constantly wandering outside the base suddenly found an opportunity, and quickly rushed towards the intersection. Big guy, the kindergarten master was so anxious that he couldn't help but shout, "Don't worry. Don't be impatient." Meng Ze reassured, immediately ordered to Jubrain, Lancer team, doping, forward protrusion, fire. Meng Ze's orders are transmitted through the brain decomposition and transmission directly to the armored communication interface of each biochemical soldier. When technology reaches a certain level, the commander's control of the troops can be refined to each soldier. It's just that with a few exceptions, that's not usually the case. No commander's attention can be refined to that extent. As Meng Ze's order was relayed in place, a whole 2,000 biochemical lancers, with a stab, collectively injected doping. The movement speed, fire density, and accuracy of the lancers and soldiers were suddenly greatly improved. As a side effect, dozens of points of vitality are lost. A large number of Zergs first experienced the baptism of tank fire, but the scars on the body could not suppress the bloodthirsty hearts of the bugs. Hundreds of furious jumping insects, braving tank fire, swooped up from the intersection, and Meng Ze's troops were waiting in strict formation. Just received an order from the commander to open fire. Whoosh! The intense firing of electromagnetic rifles suddenly sounded. The kindergarten master, who was nervously staring at the firefight, was so shocked by the fierce battle scene in his field of vision that he almost jumped. His Lancer units, whose fire poured on the Zerg, often only punched a dent, and even many times, the bullets were bounced off. But now, in front of his eyes, the Zerg who rushed to the intersection instantly flesh and blood flew, and the dozens of jumping insects in front of him were smashed into pieces almost the moment they emerged. The front advances. In my ear came the command of the big man Meng Ze. On the big screen, the Lancers began to move in a neat step, although the pace was not fast, but unwavering. Like a steel city wall, with an overwhelming momentum, it pressed against the Zerg. The Zerg troops, which were unrivaled in the eyes of kindergarten masters in the past, have become lambs to be slaughtered. A team of scientific spacecraft follow the probe. Lancers 2 to 5, Firemen 2 and 3, echelons follow, rotate to engage. The goal, to destroy all Zerg units within a radius of 50 kilometers around the base. Medical detachments accompany the battle. 1 team of firemen, 6 teams of lancers scattered at the intersection, 6 or 7 teams of lancers, and laid out defensive positions along the edge of the heights. Meng Ze's commands are concise, but these brain-controlled brains refine orders based on what is in the commander's mind when giving orders. The intelligent brain of the 5-level technology of the command center is extremely intelligent. Most of the time, the commander's orders can be perfectly executed, and in rare cases, the commander will be required to correct. And as the time of cooperation with the commander increases, the intelligent brain will become more and more comprehensible to the commander's commands, until it becomes like the existence of the commander's deputy brain. The reason why Meng Ze determined the target to destroy all Zerg units within a 50-kilometer radius of the base was not to say a random data, but this distance, which is exactly the range that the tank fortress mode can cover. The science spacecraft unfolded along the route of the various Lancer detachments, fly high in the air and provide sight and anti-stealth support for Lancer units. As the troops progressed, Meng Ze also spotted the Zerg host floating in the air outside the base. Sure enough, it's a Zerg host. Confirming his guess, Meng Ze can also understand why the Zerg can use a small amount of troops to maintain the continuous suppression of the kindergarten master. The advance of the Lancer unit was not fast, but it was steady, alternate cover and rotation of treatment between units, with Meng Ze having a huge numerical advantage and a small difference in the strength of the two arms. Meng Ze's Lancer Corps was almost unscathed. The Zerg, on the other hand, are under the command of the host and fight and retreat while slowing down the speed of Meng Ze's troops. He quickly gathered the scattered Zerg squad. On the plains high underground, the Lancers strictly carried out Meng Ze's established strategic instructions, except for a few places where formation adjustments were made due to topographical factors. The whole process of operation was as strict as machinery, precise and accurate. It seems that these biochemical warriors never consider whether the enemy is strong or not, never consider the size of the casualties of their companions, never consider whether it is reasonable, only have the mission goal in their eyes, and are just mechanically and accurately carrying out the commander's orders. This way, in Meng Ze's eyes, gave him a strange feeling of being real and intertwined with the game. As fighters, they are undoubtedly excellent, just a little unhuman. If Meng Ze hadn't been in it, witnessed the birth of this batch of biochemical warriors, and personally felt their presence, he would really think that these were just virtual NPCs. However, Meng Ze's incomprehension is only due to the fact that the level of world civilization born is too low, and all this in the interstellar world is precisely the most common mode of interstellar civilization warfare. In the cruel interstellar war, countless blood and tears, and even the lessons of the collapse of civilization, the surviving advanced civilizations summed up the first principle of interstellar warfare: absolute execution. In the real world, we can see from many films that you defy the instructions of your superiors, change your plan privately, and then succeed and become the hero in the film. But in the war of higher civilizations, this situation is almost non-existent, and even a temporary success will lead to a total failure. The war of advanced civilizations often involves an incomparably vast area, and each of the higher civilizations has unparalleled biotechnology, mimicry technology and even mind control means, and the penetration between civilizations is extreme. You don't even know if your face-to-face companion is your own. Therefore, after the war began, except for a very few or even only one person, no one could master all the battlefield information. These few or even individual people, who are responsible for all or part of the battlefield, are commanders. And usually, for safety, commanders act alone. In order to ensure the commander's absolute control over all the troops under his command, every soldier produced is genetically loyal. These mass-produced fighters do not belong to the citizens of civilization, but are specially made tools of war, with resources provided by civilization, the private property of commanders. With high-level civilization means, what is lacking is never an army or fleet, but a good enough commander. Commanders can only be born from citizens and must undergo countless rigorous screenings. These countless screenings are not only to rule out the possibility of spies, but also to ensure that the commander is good enough, because any commander has a huge weapon of war and bears the responsibility for the continuation of civilization. The StarCraft simulation world is a miracle of countless lucky births of the Imperial Federation. With the scientific and technological level of the 6th level civilization, a semi-real cosmic space containing the technology of the 8th level civilization was actually born. The most important thing is that the StarCraft simulation universe is actually related to the ethereal Imperial Federation state movement. Any foreign spy who is not part of the Imperial Federation, or even a rebel who is tempted inside, can be identified and marked as long as they enter the interstellar world. No civilization below the 8th level of civilization can circumvent this means. As for the 8th level or above civilization, that is not something that the Imperial Federation needs to consider. If an 8th level civilization wants the destruction of the Imperial Federation, it is no more difficult than killing an ant. The 8th level civilization is called information civilization, which involves the control of ethereal information, and the strength of its civilization is not something that the Imperial Federation can speculate. It is precisely because of the particularity of the StarCraft simulation world that, since its birth, the interstellar world has become the only way for the Imperial Federation to train and select commanders. However, although the interstellar world is created by the Imperial Federation, it is not completely controlled by the Imperial Federation because the technological level exceeds the civilization level. The resources of the interstellar world are limited, in order to avoid vicious competition, but also to select real military enthusiasts, so the Imperial Federation promotes it as a war game, through a more strict qualification selection method, from the citizens to select players to enter this world. These players selected by the Imperial Federation unless they are particularly good and have obtained the access qualification of the commander of the Imperial Federation Army, will be told the truth about the interstellar world. Therefore, in the eyes of most players, this is a strange game world with a high degree of simulation close to reality. These players, including the dog-headed buns, and some people with special identities have always known the truth of the world, such as Dreamstar Nightglow, not to mention the real situation, and whatever Meng Ze thinks. After the birth of the command mode, rules, of the interstellar world, it will not change because of anyone. This model is determined by the commander, and the established combat pattern and strategy, and the troops under Ju Brain, and Meng Ze acts strictly according to it until the target is completed, return according to the corresponding arrangement, or wait for the commander to dispatch again. In the process of carrying out the mission, unless the commander gives a new order, even if the situation on the battlefield changes, the strategy will not change in any way, even if the troops suffer heavy casualties, or even completely destroy the army. This model may be rigid, but in a real civilized war, the execution of the army has been strictly guaranteed, and more serious problems have been prevented. P.S. This chapter is particularly difficult to write. It is part of the larger context of the story. It has to fit the model of the book and have the corresponding rationality, changed many times. Brothers can help find loopholes. In addition, today's plus more is completed. Brothers, remember to vote tomorrow. The jumbling of thoughts in Meng Ze's head doesn't affect his actions. With the arrival of the second and third transport aircraft, Meng Ze began further tactical arrangements. The biochemical soldiers transported by the second batch of transport planes went directly around the air, along the route cleared by the detection of the ghost fighter, and flew to the base where I died with whom. When the third batch of transport aircraft arrived, Meng Ze turned on the long-range detection function of the satellite station. Limited by the research level of the Spy Research Center on long-range detection, Meng Ze's long-range detection coverage is not large, and the energy consumption is also high. The use of 2 long-range detection radars drained all the energy of the Meng Ze satellite station. It will take time for the satellite station to recover, but Meng Ze has allies there. 90 degrees below zero. I need your intelligence support now. After the communication was connected, Meng Ze went straight to the point. With the current relationship between the two, many things no longer need to be too polite, so it feels raw. Hearing Meng Ze's title, -90 degrees, is also a little helpless. In fact, he said to let Meng Ze call him by his name, but Meng Ze replied, calling his real name does not call the game name to feel it. As for the real reason, only the author knows. Meng Ze's requirements are easy for -90 degrees, unlike the small number of Meng Ze command centers, which now have more than 20 command centers at -90 degrees. According to the coordinates provided by Meng Ze, 7 or 8 long-range detection capabilities were used at -90 degrees. The situation of the 2 mining areas, and the Zerg along the route was clearly detected. Meng Ze discovers that due to changes on the side of the kindergarten master base, the Zerg are mobilizing nearby forces, and planning a large-scale counterattack. This is the time for Meng Ze to act. If you don't take it, you will be to blame, and if you don't seize this opportunity, when the Zerg react, it won't be so easy to grab the mine. Meng Ze immediately flew the third batch of transport planes to the mining area closest to the ruins, and sent part of the engineer and half of the ghost soldiers from the 4th Fleet to the mining area to facilitate communication with allies. The mining area to the east near the ruins was named Forward Base 1 by Meng Ze. Another mining area further west in the direction of the headquarters was named Advance Base 2. Transport 3 teams, transfer to the No. 1 Forward Base. Transport Team 4, transfer to the number 2 Forward Base. Mandatory Airborne Science and Technology Ball, commonly known as the Science Spaceship, which imposes a defense matrix on the 2 teams to rush to 100 transport aircraft. The engineering troops, the ghost troops, the edge is left behind, waiting for the control field. With the 3 instructions of Meng Ze going down, all transport aircraft began to accelerate for a mandatory assault state. Countless huge pale blue ion tail flames streaked through the sky with dense rays of light, illuminating most of the sky. Such a huge vision. The Zerg host naturally detected it. Some kind of invisible fluctuation spread out, and the insects on the ground all fell into a manic state. Team 3, Science Ship, ready. The transport aircraft at the forefront has entered a dive state, and when it drops to a certain height, it will level and decelerate at an extremely fast speed to facilitate the airborne landing of biological and chemical troops. At this time, when the transport plane was most dangerous, Meng Ze stared at the transport plane group nervously, constantly estimating the location of the swarm in his heart. On the ground, hundreds of multi-nailed spiny snakes have raised their heads, expanded their abdominal cavity, and are ready to spit acid at any time. The attack distance of the multi-armored spiny snake is very clear to Meng Ze, and the acid spray can reach up to 10 kilometers away. However, it is only penetrating within 3 kilometers, and beyond 3 kilometers, only the corrosive ability of the acid itself remains. Even if the transport aircraft is corroded, it cannot be destroyed in an instant, but it must not be penetrated by acid, otherwise it will definitely fall off one by one. The Level 1 transport aircraft has a fragile body and underground defense, and it is a type with thin skin and meat filling for multi-armored spiny snakes. At a distance of 20 kilometers, the altitude of the transport aircraft is dropping at an extremely fast pace. At a distance of 15 kilometers, transport aircraft began to enter the leveling. At a distance of 10 kilometers, some of the spiny snakes have begun to spray acid, but Meng Ze resisted and did not order. At a distance of 5 kilometers, the shell of the transport aircraft in front of it has been corroded into large holes. Defense matrix. Meng Ze ordered, Wula, and 100 defense matrices instantly protected the 100 transport aircraft in front of him. The defense matrix looks like a network of light, formed by countless tiny atoms, and the transport plane is the nucleus that is protected in it. The acid spewed by the multi-nailed snake hits the light net, like a mosquito being slapped by an electric mosquito. The electric light flickered, making a loud, crackling sound, but none of the attacks could penetrate the defense matrix. 2 km away, airborne, dense figures instantly appeared in the sky. Biochemical warriors in heavy armor descended from the sky. The multi-armored thorn snake instantly shifted its target, and the crackling sound of blows sounded densely in the sky. But Meng Ze's biochemical soldiers can be regarded as anti-high blood thick, as long as they are not hit continuously. They are injured but not killed. 4 biochemical soldiers. Not a mutilated injury is equal to none. The height of the transport plane airdrop was only a few hundred meters, and in 10 seconds, the biochemical soldiers approached the ground. A continuous bang sounded, and a powerful airflow erupted from the armored foot. Cushioning. Be born. Although buffered, the huge weight of the individual armor still brought a huge impact, allowing each biochemical warrior to be subjected to different degrees of internal trauma. Some of them were seriously injured, and their vitality was instantly lowered by 200 or 300 points. But compared to 1,000 points of vitality, for a biochemical warrior, it is only a minor injury. Doping. Fire. In the stab sound, the strong magnetic Gauss rifle remembered the dense whoosh sound. The multi-armor spiny snake on the opposite side, on the carapace, instantly had more dense bullet holes. The berserk jumping insects pounced, but there were too few of them, and all died on the sprint path. Plasma splashed, carapace flew, and after a while, the stumps and minced flesh were everywhere. The biochemical soldiers formed a queue nearby and steadily advanced. The Zerg did not expect this sudden blow from the sky, and the entire highland mine was only defended by a small number of berserk jumpers and multi-armored snakes. This strength was quickly wiped out by Meng Ze's biochemical core. The worker bees, who were mining in the mine, suddenly became all victims. Compared with the berserk jumping insects and multi-armored spiny snakes that specialize in combat, the worker bees with the same status as mining machines have almost negligible combat effectiveness. After destroying all the Zerg in the mine and destroying the brood, Meng Ze immediately began arranging for the landing of transport planes transporting the engineers and ghost soldiers. As soon as the engineers disembarked from the transport plane, they quickly began to build fortifications. Supply stations and fortresses are placed at the intersection, and supply stations are placed in front of them as buildings to block the Zerg charge. Missile launch pads also began to be densely built along the edge of the highland mines. As the main air defense structure on the ground, the missile launch pad also has anti-stealth functions. It is a great addition to the Meng Ze science spacecraft, which is still too fragile. Just when the construction of the number 1 forward base began to be built, Battle for Advance Base 2 also began, almost a copy of the tactics of the No. 1 forward base. The battle at the number 2 forward base was almost uneventful. Advance Base number 2 is not only farther away from the ruins, but the Zerg's defensive forces are pitiful. 3 or 2 strokes were swept away by Meng Ze's airborne forces. Subsequently, the construction of the number 2 forward base also began. However, unlike Meng Ze, who wants to build a war fortress into a forward base, Meng Ze, the second base, wants to build a front-line supply base. Not only did a command center be purchased for Base 2, but construction of a forge and airfield began. Considering his lack of reconnaissance capabilities, Meng Ze pretended to be a satellite station for the command center at Base 2 as the second command center with long-range detection capabilities. Just when Meng Ze's two bases were in full swing at the same time, in a place Meng Ze didn't know, the Zerg who was stabbed in a hornet's nest went completely crazy. A distance of 1,000 kilometers. For the second and third level technology races, a few hours away, if Meng Ze is willing, his core will soon be able to appear at the door of the ruined Zerg's hometown. The relic Zerg immediately cancelled many buildings under construction or upgraded, slowing down the rapid expansion, and began to build rattan clusters along the border base, and quickly mutated into defensive ground spurs, or anti-aircraft spores. The entire Zerg strategic forward base switched to defense mode. At the same time, a network of insect colonization sites is built in each base, which is a biological channel that is almost teleported to the pseudo-dimension, allowing the Zerg Legion to quickly cross a long distance and carry out strategic maneuvers. The core base, a high-level core building, whose construction was originally suspended due to the extreme consumption of resources. Scorpion stacks and Thunder Beast layers also quickly began to spawn. The changes of the Zerg were immediately detected by -90° that were at war with the Zerg. The Zerg, who was still desperately attacking the second frontline base at -90°, instantly stopped attacking, turned around and began to retreat. And the Zerg Legion, which had originally broken the first frontline base at -90° and was advancing towards the east, also began to retreat. 90° below zero immediately came to mind Meng Ze's attack. Meng Ze, what the hell did you do? As soon as the communication was connected, -90° immediately asked curiously. Just now he was busy, directing troops to fight the Zerg, and did not pay attention to the situation on Meng Ze's side. But two mines were built. As soon as Meng Ze said, -90° immediately knew where it was, and it was he who helped Meng Ze conduct the reconnaissance. The map switched over, looked at it for a while, and immediately realized the importance of these two locations at -90°. Especially the highland mine near the ruins is like a sharp knife, inserted into the hinterland of the Zerg. Meng Ze, you're ruthless enough, but you're in big trouble next. With that, -90° sent the image he had just detected to Meng Ze. In the center of the image, there are two Zerg buildings that have not yet fully grown, and the wisdom brain of the command center has deliberately marked it next to it, Scorpion Stack and Thunder Beast Lair. The brain of Meng Ze's command center immediately gave instructions for the corresponding building, Scorpion Stack, a necessary biological building for the production of the Zerg Scorpion, as a high-level field control type of the Zerg, with dark swarms, plagues, devouring, burying and other skills. It is a strategic unit for the Zerg to tackle tough problems. Thunder Beast Lair, a necessary biological building for the production of the Zerg-class Thunder Beast. Thunder Beast is a high-level Zerg attack type of troops, with extremely powerful armor, extremely strong vitality and strong recovery ability, and is the core unit of the Zerg attack. Brain's explanation only made Meng Ze roughly understand the purpose of these two arms, but then the battlefield video sent at -90° completely showed the domineering power of these two arms. The two sides in the video are level 3 Terrans and level 3 Zerg. The two sides set up positions in a plain area, and the Terrans were mainly spearmen, medics and a small number of tanks, supplemented by a small number of ghost fighters and technology balls, which was the standard mode against the Zerg after years of exploration. The Zerg are mainly Thunder Beasts, berserk jumping insects, scorpions, a small number of hosts, king insects, multi-beetle snakes, and a class that Meng Ze has never seen, and the wisdom brain has been labeled self-detonating bats. The Zerg are the one who takes the initiative to attack. At the beginning of the war, the self-detonating bats suddenly moved forward and took up positions, deterring the science spacecraft in the air so that it could not get close to the Scorpion. Then the Scorpion moved forward, and in an instant, several huge yellow clouds appeared on the battlefield, and in front of the turret position, all areas were tightly covered. The Zerg Thunder Beast and Berserk, Jumping Bug Mixed Legion, mixed into the fog and quickly attacked. The roar of tank heavy artillery continued to sound, and the fire of the Lancers also poured non-stop. But because the field of view is completely obscured, and various detection instruments are disrupted, all attacks can only be blind fire. Soon, the Zerg Hybrid Legion rushed out of the fog, and the huge number could hardly see much damage. The Lancer Corps was forced to retreat, but the tanks could not move, and could only become victims. The Scorpion followed its forward, and several large clouds of yellow fog, appeared above the lancers and tank troops. The Turan commander understood the key to the war, but helplessly there were too few scientific spaceships, perhaps not of high level, and under the forced assault, they were all destroyed by self-detonating bats. As soon as the science ship is gone, the entire war enters the rhythm of the Zerg. Every time the yellow fog appeared, the Turan lancers had to retreat, but the speed of retreat is not at all comparable to the Zerg's thunder beasts and berserk, jumping insects. Occasionally, the warring sides got out of the range of the yellow fog, but the defense of the thunder beast was simply too perverted, and a large group of lancers gathered fire on a thunder beast, and they couldn't kill it for several minutes. In desperation, the Turan commander could only watch his troops being completely destroyed by the Zerg little by little. At the end of the video, Meng Ze hears the Turan commander's laments. Meng Ze could fully understand the Turan commander's feelings. Are you done reading it? 90 degrees below zero. He saw Meng Ze's face change, and asked in the middle of time. I'm done, it's really fierce. Meng Ze exhaled. Feeling the pressure, the Scorpion's Dark Swarm skill not only obscures the battlefield, but also reduces the hit rate of long-range strike fire to almost negligible. As soon as the skill is released, all the automatic aiming systems of the Turan Legion will be interfered with and failed in the shielding area. This is simply the nemesis of our technological race. And the Thunder Beast is a class of troops. The skin is thick, I asked someone. The basic defense is 30 points, and if you use some technology, there is about 40 defenses, and the vitality is as high as 3000. The Zerg have used these two advanced classes at once, and it seems that Meng Ze you stepped on the bug's sore feet, this time. 90 degrees below zero has obviously studied the high-level troops of the third-level Zerg, and has a deep understanding of the core class of the Scorpion. Haha. Although it is a little too forceful, but this time the Zerg definitely does not have the money to upgrade its building level. Although the pressure will definitely be high, Meng Ze is still very satisfied with his raid. That's for sure, although there are many Zerg mines, after all, they have only come out of the ruins not long ago, and it is absolutely impossible to have too much inventory. Minus 90 degrees is very confident in this judgment. Meng Ze is the same judgment. Although it is not possible to know exactly how many mines the Zerg have, it can be roughly estimated, and even if there are super rich mines in the Zerg-occupied area, the final result will not be much. Next, the Zerg will definitely burst out a wave of soldiers to compete for the mine, which is unavoidable. What Meng Ze can do is consume it as much as possible and drain its resources. When the Zerg resources cannot keep up, the troops will inevitably be insufficient. At this point, it can slowly encroach on its mines. For the consumption of the Zerg, Meng Ze has been prepared for a large number of casualties, and even its own losses exceed the Zerg can be accepted. Isn't it just a struggle for resources? Meng Ze is not afraid at all. The Zerg will definitely storm your advance base number 1 next. What are you going to do? 90 degrees below zero asked Meng Ze. Hearing the question of minus 90 degrees, Meng Ze fell into deep thought. Two new advanced classes of the Zerg, Thunder Beast and Scorpion. The Thunder Beast is good to say. It is hard to be hard. It is a big deal to take people to pilot, and there will always be a time to kill it. However, the ability of the Zerg Scorpion is too buggy, and under the coverage of the Dark Bug Swarm skill, the attack effect of all long-range classes is close to zero. Their own troops, no matter which one, are especially long-range soldiers. This is a ghost. Originally, the Turans were best at fixed defensive positional warfare, but as long as the Scorpion's Dark Insect Swarm skills came out, no matter how strong the position was, it was almost the same as paper paste. Meng Ze's initial approach to turning Advance Base 1 into a flesh and blood grinder was almost certainly not working. Therefore, to fight, you must fight a sports war. However, when fighting a sports war, it is also necessary to pay attention to a style of fighting, which does not mean that casually pulling a wave of soldiers around is called a sports war. Isn't there any downside to the Dark Swarm skill? Meng Ze himself didn't know much about Scorpion skills, so he had to question minus 90 degrees. He believed that no race of troops could be invincible. If that were the case, the Turans would have been wiped out long ago. Of course, there are disadvantages. The disadvantage is to weaken the ability to attack from range, and it is not a difference between the enemy and me. 90 degrees below zero. This is a ghost shortcoming. Meng Ze couldn't help but burst into a foul mouth. In addition to long range, the Zerg have some classes that are good at hand-to-hand combat, and Thunder Beast and Berserk, Jumping Bug are among the best. A thick skin and flesh, very resistant, and the attack power can also be, even if one is less fortune-telling. It seems that the resource consumption in production is not high, and it can be completely full. So, speaking of which, there are no shortcomings. Meng Ze was skeptical. It's not that there aren't. I'm not sure if that's a disadvantage. Scratching his head at -90 degrees, he said, talk about it. Scorpion manufacturing requires a lot of resources. Do you know the exact value? Meng Ze asked hurriedly. This kind of thing. How can you know the specific value if it is a large number of units put into use, such as berserk jumping insects, multi-armored spiny snakes, etc.? It can also allow the wisdom brain to roughly estimate the resource consumption of the arms through statistical methods. But this small amount of troops manufactured cannot be estimated at all. Then how do you know? This is the experience of fighting. Isn't the strongest force in the interstellar world now still a player? Where are those Zerg in the past? Not all of them were destroyed one by one. Everyone just groped out the general situation of the Zerg class, the Scorpion class, no matter which war it is. The number of them is not too much. Even if it is a super large-scale battle, a few hundred is almost the upper limit. Therefore, everyone deduces from this situation that the resource consumption of Scorpions must be quite large. Otherwise this class of troops is too perverted. You just saw the video using the Dark Swarm skill, and when you fight, you also have to watch out for another skill of the Scorpion, the Plague, which is a regional infection ability. If your troops are too concentrated, as soon as the Plague skill comes out, a large number of troops will be scrapped, and this skill is so perverted that even buildings can't be avoided. The statement of -90 degrees just surprised Meng Ze. Are you sure this is still the Plague? Buildings, which have no life at all, can actually be infected, which is not only perverted, it is simply a fantasy. The two frowned and sighed with sad sighs about the power of the Zerg Scorpion, and Meng Ze harvested a weakness of the Scorpion that was not a weakness. Then Meng Ze remembered something. I watched the video. When the Zerg went to war with us, they were very wary of the science spacecraft. This science ship should be the key to dealing with the Zerg Scorpion, right? Although Meng Ze only watched the video once, he was keenly aware of the Zerg's vigilance against Terran science ships. As soon as the Terran science spacecraft moves, the Zerg's self-detonating bats immediately follow and guard against it. When acting, they are all science ships specifically aimed at the Terrans. 90 degrees below zero glanced at Meng Ze in surprise. This guy knew almost nothing about the Zerg advanced soldiers, indicating that he had not studied the information of the Zerg advanced soldiers at all. Just watching the video once, you can actually find this key point at once. This battlefield sense of smell is very unusual. It is indeed the key. The radiation of the scientific spacecraft is very effective against the Zerg class, no matter which one. If it is a Scorpion, as long as it is successfully irradiated once, it can cause death. However, it is difficult to successfully irradiate the Scorpions. You also saw that on the battlefield, the Scorpion is always under protection. The kind of self-detonating bat you are talking about? Meng Ze asked. Not necessarily. Maybe it's a multi-armored spiny snake. However, because our science spacecraft can use radiation over long distances, it is usually self-detonating bats that protect Scorpions, which are powerful and cheap, and before the Zerg start a war, they will always deploy this type of troops on the battlefield on a large scale. However, the battlefield situation is changing rapidly, and the protection of the Scorpion by the Zerg is not foolproof. So in the past, it was usually by sacrificing a lot of troops to make loopholes in the protection of the Scorpion by the Zerg, and then the scientific spacecraft took the opportunity to radiate it to death. On the battlefield, as long as the Scorpion dies, or even only needs to die partially, the turnaround will come. However, every opportunity is exchanged for huge losses in the end. Isn't the war a resource? 90 degrees below zero sighed. Meng Ze listened, but, haha, smiled. Speaking of resources, Meng Tuao is not tired. Communicating with -90 degrees, Meng Ze's heart calmed down. The third level Zerg actually has nothing to fear. From the data alone, the second level mysterious level of troops, and then loaded with top level equipment. In fact, the data is not much worse than the third level ordinary Zerg. With similar forces on both sides, Meng Ze's army is actually fully capable of confronting the Relic Zerg at this time. Of course, if you let the Relic Zerg upgrade, it will be difficult to say, even if it can be fought against. It will be much more difficult than now. However, due to Meng Ze's previous operation, the number 1 forward base has been pushed to the doorstep of the Zerg's old den, forcing the Zerg to now have to change strategy. It also interrupted the pace of the Zerg's advancement. Considering the coming war, Meng Ze needs a lot of science ships, a lot of biochemical soldiers. 2 of the headquarters airfields and forges have been upgraded, and the level 2 airfield and forge at Advanced Base 2 have been built. Now Meng Ze has insufficient resources, and no longer upgrades or builds the forge and airfield, and instead 2 biochemical arsenals are laid down at Base 2. The airfield at Base 2 has begun to upgrade existing science ships. After the transformation is completed, the attributes of the science spacecraft will be greatly improved, and of course, the resource consumption will also be very touching. Science spaceship, level 2 mysterious, population, 4 units, life force, 2000, attack power, 0, defense power, 5 plus 5, technology bonus, speed, 200 plus 50, technology bonus, manufacturing demand, 20,000 units of crystal ore. Description: airtight field control unit, can detect stealth, with defense matrix, EMP electromagnetic shockwave, and radiation and other capabilities. In addition to the science ship against the Scorpion, the Tier 2 tank Meng Ze is also ready to be modified. Although after the appearance of Scorpions, tanks are very easy to target, but the damage of tanks is surface damage, and the new electromagnetic shells have fragmentation damage capabilities. Even if there is no direct hit after the shell explodes, the damage caused by the splash is still effective, but it is not as obvious as the direct hit. Used to defend the intersection of the Highland mines, the effect will not be much worse. The width of the Highland intersection is more than 100 meters. Even if you fight blindly, you can make the Zerg who hit the intersection peel into skin. Of course, this effect will definitely not last long, and when the intersection is broken, the tank is basically an abandoned child. However, even for this effect, Meng Ze is willing to invest some resources. The source of the transformation of the new tank is the ones left over from the previous help of the kindergarten master, and who I have with to help defend the defense. Meng Ze initially supported 2 tanks totaling 18,000 tanks, and now there are less than 4,000 left. Such a big battle loss is also the reason why Meng Ze takes care of his little brother. The tanks produced by the 2 younger brothers were basically laid out in the back, and Meng Ze let his tank stand in front. Once the intersection broke through and some Zerg leaked in, Meng Ze's tank bore the brunt and the damage was naturally high. But now the mission of these tanks is complete, not only because Meng Ze has replenished the younger brother's base with second-level lancers, but also because the number of tanks of the 2 little brothers has also increased. At this time, Meng Ze withdrew the tank for modification, which did not affect the defense of the little brother's base. The price of the modification of the new tank is not as high as that of scientific spacecraft, but it is also a matter of money. Tank, level 2 mysterious, population, 1 unit, life force, 2000, attack power, 50 plus 18 normal mode, 200 plus 72 fortress mode, defense, 10 plus 5, technology bonus, speed, 40 plus 10, technology bonus, manufacturing requirement, 4,000 units crystal ore. So Meng Ze plans to complete only half of the renovation, and is ready to put 500 of them into forward base 1 as a defensive force. Meng Ze did not intend to give up on advance base 1 easily. According to Meng Ze's idea, even if the Zerg finally not advance base 1, it would have to break a few teeth. Meng Ze's side is nervously preparing for war, and the Zerg side is similar. The forces originally summoned and planned to attack the kindergarten masters have also shrunk back. Meng Ze's lancers who are cleaning around the kindergarten master base encounter fewer and fewer Zergs. Wait until the area around the kindergarten master base is 50 kilometers around, and all of them are cleaned. Meng Ze mobilized these units, formed 14 mixed formations in groups of 500 men, and dispersed in 3 directions: due west, southwest and northwest. The purpose is to clear the base where the Zerg bypassed the kindergarten master, and who I had died with, and infiltrated the forces closer to Meng Ze. If these threats are not eliminated as much as possible, in wartime, Meng Ze's support from the rear will be attacked. Meng Ze cleared his back road while scattering some of the biochemical soldiers at base 1 in a small team of 20 people. More than 100 squads of lancers, from base 1 to a location not far from the perimeter of the Zerg mine, were all filled with Meng Ze's reconnaissance vision, and where Meng Ze can't take care of it, -90 degrees is a good auxiliary. Compared with Meng Ze, -90 degrees has many satellite stations and sufficient energy. Almost every half hour, a long-range probe of the 3 Zerg mines closest to Meng Ze was chosen. The distance between these 3 mining areas and the Meng Ze 1 base is about 400 to 700 kilometers each. It is only 430 kilometers away from the latest, northeast of base 1. This base is also the focus of Meng Ze's defense. At the headquarters, Meng Ze's previous production of 2,000 Ghost Fighters has been upgraded. He was then dispatched by Meng Ze, and was on his way to frontline base number 2. The modified Ghost Fighter is no longer as fragile as it once was. Ghost Fighter, level 2 mysterious, population, 2 units, life force, 2,000, attack power, 50 to the ground, 100 to the air, defense power, 5 plus 5, technology bonus, speed, 250 plus 50, technology bonus, manufacturing requirements, 4,000 units of crystal ore. Description: ground attack with high concentration weapons, shoot into the air with Gemini 2 missiles, can be invisible. This batch of ghost fighters is not many, but this is not what Meng Ze uses to support the main battlefield. The great leader once said, "At war with the enemy, follow that you fight yours, I fight mine, take me as the Lord, and keep the initiative." What Meng Ze needs to achieve in the first step of the war against the Zerg has always been clear. It is not counting on a wave of killing the Zerg, but to drag him down, consume him, and make the Zerg have no resources to upgrade and cannot expand. So Meng Ze didn't want to wait for the Zerg to hit the door, or just fight head-to-head with the main forces of the Zerg. This batch of ghost fighters was prepared by Meng Ze for guerrilla warfare. 2,000 second-level ghost fighters, not more, less than much, and particularly mobile, especially suitable for attack and harassment operations. As time went by, the atmosphere of war intensified. Meng Ze's tanks have been remodeled, and half of the 500 Generation 2 tanks have been successfully deployed to Base 1. In the vast area in front of the base, Meng Ze's squad of Lancers, as Eilener has engaged the Zerg small group. Meng Ze's order to these rifle squads was to fight if they could, and to retreat if they could not fight, in order to preserve their vital forces and ensure reconnaissance vision as their mission objectives. Due to the existence of these squads of Lancers, the host of the Zerg does not dare to roam the sky unscrupulously, seriously compressing the Zerg's reconnaissance ability. So the Zerg had to divide up a number of small groups to clean up the battlefield, not to mention the fierce battle between the reconnaissance forces of the two races. On the -90-degree side, after dozens of long-range detections, the main forces of the Zerg were finally captured. The main force is not only the expected Thunder Beast, plus the Berserk Jumping Worm. It's a mixed combination of Berserk Jumping Insects, multi-beetle snakes, multi-legged lurkers, Thunder Beasts, plus a small number of scorpions. Unsurprisingly, these main Zerg forces are located in the northeast mine closest to Base 1. However, due to the existence of the Zerg insect breeding ground net, it is not entirely certain whether troops will be sent from this direction in the end. Meng Ze saw the main force of the Zerg appear, so he began to mobilize a combination of biochemical soldiers and science ships. Half of the Lancer unit was drawn from Base 1 by Meng Ze into the wilderness. At the same time, half of the number 2 base was also drawn, and nearly 10,000 gunners were transferred in the direction of number 1 base. The upgraded science spacecraft moved with the gunner detachment at Base 1 for the most part, a total of 300, and only 30 ships followed the action of the gunner detachment of Base number 2. The biochemical team 1 at Base 1 will be the main force fighting the Zerg, in addition to leaving 2,000 other biochemical soldiers to assist in its defense. The other biochemical soldier troops of nearly 18,000 people were also pumped out by Meng Ze to form a biochemical team 3, and 50 scientific spaceships accompanying the action. After the biochemical 3 team came out of the base where I died with, they moved due east. If the Zerg moves slowly, then biochemical team 3, together with biochemical team 1, will converge near the Zerg mining area northeast of Base 1. Because of the existence of the Zerg insect land network, the main force can be easily transferred to other mining areas through the insect land network in the base. Therefore, Meng Ze mobilizes his main forces to help the Zerg choose the battlefield location. If the main force of the Zerg shifts, you can directly attack the Zerg mining area. With the movement of these main forces of Meng Ze, the countdown to the first head-on battle with the Zerg has begun. Meng Ze was distracted from following the movements of his troops while connecting to the communication of overtaking at Dream Bend. Big guy, I have already counted the information you wanted. The communication was connected, and the Dream Corner overtaking sent a map. Make the most of people. Meng Ze's number 1 brother is the best at intelligence gathering and interacting with people. In order to obtain as much pre-war information as possible, Meng Ze commissioned him to collect information about the Zerg mining area.
Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share and subscribe. Have a great day.